The envelope sat on my kitchen counter like a ghost I didn't invite. Creamy cardstock, gold embossed letters, to Regal for this chipped Formica. Jason Carter and Sarah Miller request the pleasure of your company. I read it 3 times, each pass feeling less like an invitation and more like a summons from royalty. My younger brother, the family's crown prince, was getting engaged, and I, Michael Carter, the 32-year-old black sheep, was expected to appear. Smile. Nod. Pretend. It had been 10 years since I'd dropped out of medical school. A decade since I looked my father in the eyes and said, I can't do this anymore. And he didn't yell. He didn't rage. That might have been easier. No, he just stopped talking. A silence heavier than stone settled between us. One that never lifted. That silence became my inheritance, a constant reminder that I had failed them. Not just in school, but in life. At least in their eyes. My mother filled the space with sighs. Her signature move. Every phone call ended with, "Oh, Michael, we just worry about your future," as if I had none. As if I were a patient on life support, drifting in a dream they couldn't control. Jason? He soared. Business school. Finance firm. Condo with skyline views. While I ate ramen in a 4th-floor walk-up, he posted pictures from Bali and Wall Street brunches. I could still hear him that Christmas, unwrapping a Rolex from Dad while I tried to talk about a new community tech platform I was building. Access Path, I called it. A tool to help disabled folks find healthcare resources without drowning in red tape. Dad had nodded once. A stiff, patronizing, "That's nice, son." Then he turned to Jason and said, "Now here's a man making real moves." That was the script. Jason the success. Michael the experiment. And now here it was again. His big night. The engagement dinner. The anxiety returned like an old injury. I knew how this would go. Dad would drop passive-aggressive landmines. Mom would hover and redirect any praise away from me like a security guard with a flashlight. Jason would smile with that look, the one that said, "I win, again." But this time, I felt something shift. That morning, before I shut my phone, I checked Access Path's numbers. 80,000 active users. Emails from people saying they found a doctor, a community, a life again. Real people, helped by something I built, alone. I picked the charcoal gray suit I bought after our latest contract win. Not the funeral suit Mom liked. No, this one fit. And for once, so did I. When I pulled up to La Toile, the kind of French restaurant where the price of water depended on the day of the week, I handed the valet my keys and walked in. And there they were. The Carters, in all their curated glory. Dad was already bragging to Sarah's parents, wine glass in hand. Mom clutched Sarah's elbow like a priceless face. Jason wore smug like cologne. Dad gave me a handshake that barely lasted a second. "Michael, glad you could make it," he said, scanning the room for someone more interesting. Mom hugged me like I might stain her dress. "You look neat," she said, as if surprised I didn't come in a hoodie. Then she turned. "Sarah, this is our Michael." Sarah reached out with a genuine smile. "So nice to finally meet you," she said warmly. For a second, I forgot the walls I'd built. She felt different. And then, dinner began. Or, more accurately, Jason's highlight reel began. Job titles. Bonuses. Future yachts. All narrated by my parents like they were pitching him for president. At one point, Sarah's father turned to me. "And what do you do, Michael?" Before I could speak, Dad jumped in with a laugh. "Michael's our free spirit. Still chasing butterflies, aren't you, son?" Laughter. Another joke at my expense. I clenched my jaw. "I run a tech company," I said, quiet but firm. Mom changed the subject so fast it left skid marks. No one cared. No one asked. Except Sarah. During a lull, she leaned toward me. "Access Path. What does it do exactly?" I told her. Briefly. Simply. It helps disabled people find doctors, specialist support. Makes the system easier. Her eyes widened. She opened her mouth to say something, but before she could, Dad cut in again, waving it away. "Very niche, of course. A great little hobby. Keeps him busy." That was the final nudge. But what came next? That was a moment no one at that table would ever forget. She paused, fork halfway to her mouth, eyes fixed on mine. "You said your name's Michael Carter?" Sarah asked again. I nodded, unsure why the hairs on my arms had just stood up. Her gaze sharpened. "Wait." "Access Path." Her voice dropped to a near whisper, but it cut through the clatter of silverware like a bell. "Are you the Michael Carter, CEO of Access Path?" A beat of silence. Then, clink. A fork hit a plate 3 tables over. My father, mid-sip, froze. His wine glass hovered awkwardly in the air. My mother's jaw slackened, her performative poise fracturing in real time. Jason blinked like he'd seen a ghost. I opened my mouth to explain, to deny. I wasn't even sure, but Sarah beat me to it. Her voice rose with genuine excitement. "Oh my God, it is you." "I had no idea," she gasped. "My brother Mark, he's paralyzed. Got hit by a drunk driver 3 years ago. Your platform saved us. He found a specialist, an adaptive rehab center, even got into sports therapy because of you." I just stared. Sarah wasn't finished. She turned to the table, suddenly animated. "Access Path helped Mark when the system abandoned him. His doctors rave about it. Our hospital has been trying to get a formal partnership approved for months." My father's face turned an unnatural shade of pale. My mother gripped her pearls like they might anchor her to the earth. Jason looked like someone had unplugged his ego. Sarah's parents sat straighter, their interest no longer focused on the golden child, but the man sitting quietly in a charcoal gray suit at the edge of their spotlight. And then she said it. I even read an article, this profile about the founder. Visionary. Humble. Focused on impact over fame. She looked at me. "They said you refused a major buyout just to keep it nonprofit." That part was true. I had. Sarah turned back to the others, now visibly confused. "You never mentioned he was the CEO." "I thought he was." "I mean." She caught herself, then glanced at my parents, realization dawning. "Oh," she said quietly. "That's wow." Her voice trailed off. The room had changed. The entire atmosphere, as if someone had cracked a window in a house too long sealed with denial. And then came the knockout punch. My brother said he overheard someone at a gala, some man named Henderson, saying the Access Path guy was just playing around with a little website. That his family said he threw away his future. That his brother was the real success. She looked from my father to Jason. "Carter," she repeated, softly. They said their name was Carter. Boom. That was the detonation. The lie unraveling, right there on fine linen and candlelight. Richard Carter, my father, was suddenly speechless. Susan Carter's hands trembled against her wine glass. Jason looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. And for the first time in a decade, they had no script. Sarah turned to me again. "You changed my brother's life," she whispered. And that's when I realized not all validation comes from blood. Sometimes it comes from the one person no one thought was listening. Sometimes the truth doesn't knock. It kicks down the door. For a long moment, no one spoke. The clinking of glasses, the clatter of plates, all of it died under the weight of Sarah's revelation. The Carter family, normally so polished and public, looked like actors frozen mid-scene with the script yanked from their hands. I could see the machinery in my father's head trying to spin up an explanation, a pivot, anything to regain control. But nothing came. Instead, it was my mother who moved first. She gave a brittle, broken smile. We never realized it was that significant," she whispered. Sarah blinked. "You didn't know your own son built one of the most impactful disability platforms in the country?" I thought. Mom's voice faltered. "It was just a little website." My father finally found his voice. "You could have told us, Michael." That landed like a slap. "Told you?" I repeated, slowly. "I tried. Multiple times. I emailed you when we launched in 4 states. I called when we got that federal grant. You told me to stay humble and asked if Jason had seen a new boat yet." Jason squirmed in his seat. His fingers gripped his napkin like a lifeline. "I didn't think," Dad muttered. "I didn't think you'd actually made it work." Sarah's father cleared his throat. "Well, I think it's clear someone here has made more than just a hobby work." He turned to me, extending his hand with firm respect. "Michael, I'd like to hear more about Access Path. Our foundation's been looking to support platforms that deliver real results. And what you've built, it sounds extraordinary." I shook his hand, watching out of the corner of my eye as my parents blinked like the world had turned upside down. And then Jason snapped. "Oh, come on," he said, laughing hollowly. "It's not like he's curing cancer. I manage a portfolio of $90 million. I'm getting promoted to VP next quarter. That's real pressure." Sarah turned sharply toward him. "Mason, your family just spent the last 2 hours making him out to be a lost cause. And it turns out he's quietly helping thousands of families like mine. You don't see the irony in that." "Brooke, let's not turn this into a circus," Jason muttered. Sarah's face hardened. "It's Sarah, not Brooke." Dad tried to salvage it. "Michael, we're proud of you. Truly. Just, why didn't you come to us sooner with all of this?" I stared at him. Because you weren't listening. I looked at the table. At the people who'd shaped my childhood, who'd decided I was the mistake simply because I didn't fit their mold. And now that their curated reality had fractured, they were scrambling to piece it back together. Too late. Sarah reached over and placed her hand gently on mine. For what it's worth, she said, I see you. I've never been more grateful to be marrying into this family. I gave her a small smile. Well, that makes one of us. Jason stood suddenly. So what, you want a parade now? You think this makes up for 10 years of doing nothing? I stood too. No, I said, voice low. I don't need a parade. I've already built something real. I don't need your permission anymore. And for the first time in my life, I meant it. The table had shifted, and I wasn't on the outside looking in anymore. I was standing, and they were the ones shrinking. I wish I could say I planned it. That I stood in front of the mirror that morning, rehearsing this perfect takedown, imagining their stunned faces, dreaming up the moment I finally got to stand tall in the house of my own humiliation. But I didn't. I just wanted to survive the dinner. I just wanted to sit through one more performance of the Jason show, eat my overpriced salmon, and disappear back into my quiet apartment where no one looked at me like a disappointment wrapped in corduroy. But now my name had cracked their world open like a glass dropped on marble. And they were bleeding from the edges. Sarah's words still echoed. Are you the Michael Carter? The CEO? And it felt surreal, like I'd woken up in a different timeline. One where I wasn't the mistake they kept hidden. I was someone. It was Jason who shattered first. He stood abruptly, glass in hand, but his usual confidence was gone. His voice strained to keep its balance. All right, he said, forcing a laugh. Let's all just calm down, yeah? I mean, we're celebrating an engagement here. This isn't the time to make it about side projects. Side projects? That word, it hit me harder than anything else that night. Not the years of silence. Not the dismissive glances or performative sighs. That word. I felt the pressure building behind my ribs, years of restraint, of swallowing back everything I ever wanted to say. So I stood. And for the first time in that family, I didn't apologize for it. Access Path isn't a side project, I said, steady, but cold. It's a lifeline. For tens of thousands of people. For families like Sarah's. For people who've been ignored, dismissed, shoved to the corners of broken systems, kind of like how I've been treated in this one. Jason rolled his eyes. Oh, come on, man. No, I snapped, sharper than I meant. You don't get to do that. Not tonight. Not after everything. I turned toward my father, who looked like someone had unplugged him, and then to my mother, who couldn't meet my eyes. I hadn't seen her look that small since I was a kid and told her I didn't want to be a doctor. You wanted me to be someone else. You built this version of me in your heads, the failure. The cautionary tale. While Jason got the praise, the money, the pedestal, I was your quiet regret. I took a breath. I've spent a decade thinking maybe you were right. That I was broken. That leaving med school meant I'd thrown away your love permanently. Silence. And then I looked at Sarah. But I helped people. Real people. I built something that mattered. And you, I turned back to Jason, you want to reduce that to a footnote in your engagement dinner. Jason's lips curled. This is exactly why no one wants to be around you. You can't just be happy for someone else. I felt something inside me harden. You mean like how no one was ever happy for me? He opened his mouth to fight back, to deflect, but Sarah beat him to it. You told me he was working part-time at a tech shop, she said, her voice sharp now. You said he was harmless. Jason paled. I didn't mean. You lied, she said simply. I swear you could hear a napkin drop. And then Sarah's father, who had sat quietly through most of the circus, finally leaned forward. I think we've heard enough, he said, his voice calm, but edged like a blade. Michael, if you're open to it, I'd like to schedule a meeting about how our foundation can support Access Path. I nodded slowly. I'd like that. Jason sat down like the air had been punched out of him. My mother still hadn't looked at me. My father drained his glass like it might make this moment vanish. And for the first time in my life, I didn't shrink. I didn't apologize. I didn't run. I just stood there, in my own skin, finally enough. It was strange how quickly the air changed once the illusion broke. The weight of their silence was heavier than any insult they'd ever thrown my way. And in that quiet, I could hear the decades, the birthdays skipped, the dinners where I was the empty seat, the how's your little project comments spoken through half smiles and full glasses of wine. Now their forks were still, their mouths shut, and I was still standing. Sarah turned to me again, her voice softer this time. You never said anything, she whispered. Why didn't you tell me who you were? I gave a small laugh, not bitter, just tired. Because it never mattered, I said. Not to them. Not in this room. I've lived so long in the shadow of who I was supposed to be that it felt easier to disappear than fight for space. My mother's voice finally rose, brittle and uneven. That's not fair. I looked at her. Isn't it? She pressed a napkin to her lips, like she could wipe away the shame staining her voice. We didn't know. You didn't ask, I said. You talked. You judged. You pitted. But you never asked. Dad exhaled through his nose, leaning back in his chair like he was watching a boardroom deal unravel. You always had this chip on your shoulder, he muttered. No, I said. I had your voice in my head, telling me I failed, that I was a waste of potential, that I was something to explain away at golf outings and dinner parties. Sarah's father narrowed his eyes at that. Henderson? He asked. You said someone named Henderson made those comments? I nodded. He looked pointedly at my father. Is that true? Dad shifted in his seat. It was a private conversation. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the absurdity finally caught up with me. You told him I was chasing butterflies, I said. You let him mock me, diminish everything I've built, while you bragged about Jason's bonus checks and boat plans. Jason opened his mouth to defend himself, but Sarah raised a hand. Don't, she said. One word, and he stopped. My mother's lips trembled. Michael, we never meant to hurt you. But you did, I said. With every dinner where I was invisible, every time you called my work cute or noble, like I was a kid playing doctor. You buried me under Jason's shadow and then blamed me for not growing. The silence that followed was different now, not defensive, not wounded, just empty. A vacuum left behind when the mask finally falls off. Sarah's father stood, extended his hand again. Let's talk this week. Seriously. I shook it. And then, because I couldn't stay there another second, I turned and walked out. The restaurant's front doors opened into cool night air that hit like clarity. My feet hit the pavement with purpose. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't chasing their approval. I was walking in the opposite direction. And I was free. I didn't expect the calls. Not that night, not the next morning. Not when I opened my laptop to check Access Path's backend updates and saw that overnight user traffic had spiked, thanks, no doubt, to some quiet word of mouth from Sarah's hospital network. No, I didn't expect the Carter family to reach out. But they did. First, a voicemail from Mom. Michael, sweetheart, can we please talk? Your father, he didn't sleep well. This has all been very emotional for us. Then a text from Jason. No words. Just, you embarrassed Dad. Happy now? I stared at the screen. Laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so Jason, unable to imagine a world where he wasn't the center of gravity. An hour later, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Sarah. Hey, she said gently. I don't know what your plans are, but I just wanted you to know. I meant what I said. About what you built. And about how I see you. Pause. And I'm not sure where that leaves me. With him. With all of them. But I'll figure it out. You gave me more clarity in 5 minutes than they've managed in 5 years. Click. I sat there for a long time, the cursor blinking on my empty browser window, and thought, what now? The fallout came fast. Apparently, Sarah's father didn't take kindly to deception. Word got back to me, through an old college friend who happened to work in donor outreach, that the Henderson Foundation had quietly pulled a major donation earmarked for Jason's firm. The reason? Ethical misalignment. Jason must have known I had nothing to do with it, but that didn't stop him from sending one last text. You just had to ruin everything. No, I wanted to write back. You ruined it the moment you made me invisible. But I didn't respond. I just blocked his number. That week, I received an email. Not from my parents. Not from Sarah. From Arthur Henderson himself. Michael, your father and I go way back. I know Richard's pride better than most. But I also know integrity when I see it. You're doing good work. Keep doing it. And if you ever want to talk real partnerships, my door is open. Funny how the truth moves faster once it escapes its cage. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure what to say. Not because I doubted the opportunity, but because, for once, I wasn't chasing anyone's validation. I'd spent too long trying to earn love that was given freely to someone else. Now I was finally giving it to myself. Days passed. Then a week. No apology came. Not from my father. Not from my mother. And certainly not from Jason. What did arrive 4 days after the engagement dinner imploded was a letter. An actual, physical letter. Cream-colored envelope. Familiar cursive handwriting. Mom. I almost didn't open it. I thought about tossing it, unread, into the recycling bin, the same place her compassion seemed to go every time I needed it. But I didn't. I sat on the edge of my bed, tore it open, and read. Michael. We're still trying to process everything that happened. Your father feels misunderstood. Jason is heartbroken. I suppose I am too. You always were so sensitive. I wish you'd told us sooner how you felt. Maybe we could have avoided such a public scene. You must understand. Everything we've ever done has come from a place of love. Even if it didn't look like it. Please don't let this one dinner undo our entire family. We love you. Always have. We're just different in how we show it. Love. Mom. I read it twice. There was no apology. Not really. No ownership. No regret. Just an artfully written deflection. A passive attempt to gaslight me into believing this had been about my feelings, not their actions. I folded it back up and slid it into a drawer I didn't open often. I thought about what she said. We love you. Maybe they did. Maybe in their own fractured, self-centered way, they loved the idea of me. The version who didn't ask for attention, didn't make waves, didn't force them to confront the cracks in their golden family portrait. But love without respect isn't love. And I was done living for it. That night, David, my co-founder, messaged me. Saw the metrics. Whatever happened, it's blowing up in a good way. I replied simply. It wasn't intentional. Just overdue. He sent back a thumbs up, then followed with something unexpected. Proud of you. Not for the platform. For standing in your truth. It hit me harder than it should have. In 10 years of building Access Path, we'd faced impossible deadlines, funding droughts, code collapses. But I'd never once stopped to accept pride from someone who wasn't trying to diminish me. And now, I was letting it in. For the first time, I didn't feel like a mistake in someone else's success story. I was writing my own. A week after the dinner, I received a call I didn't expect. Sarah. Her voice was steady. Too steady. Do you have time to meet? I hesitated. Sure, I said. Where? She chose a quiet cafe, not flashy, not performative, the kind of place you pick when you're ready to speak honestly. When I walked in, she was already at a corner table, both hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea like she needed the warmth to hold her together. I called off the engagement, she said before I even sat down. I blinked. What? I called it off, she repeated, more gently this time. I told Jason 2 nights ago. He didn't take it well. I sat. Let the words settle. I'm not surprised, I finally said. She offered a faint smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. I realized something at that dinner. I've been measuring compatibility by ease. By presentation. Not values. Not truth. She looked at me directly. You opened something in that room, Michael. And I couldn't unsee it. I didn't know what to say. So I stayed quiet. Let her talk. My dad's furious. Not because I ended it, but because he felt duped by the family. By the narrative they sold him. About Jason. About you. She paused. He's still talking about Access Path. Wants to organize a fundraiser. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. That night wasn't meant to be mine, I said. But I'm glad someone finally saw me. She nodded. I saw more than you think, she said. I saw a man who's been carrying quiet weight for too long. Who let himself be the scapegoat so the golden child could shine. I saw dignity under pressure. I swallowed hard. No one's ever said that to me, I admitted. You deserve to hear it, she replied. We sat in silence for a moment, not awkward, but reverent. 2 people staring into the space where illusions used to be. I don't know what happens next, she said. For you. For me. For them. Neither do I said. But I know what doesn't happen. What's that? I don't shrink anymore, I said. Not for them. Not for anyone. She smiled again, this time for real. Good, she whispered. Because I'd hate to see someone like you hidden in the shadows again. And just like that, something that had lived inside me, something broken, hungry, desperate for approval, loosened its grip. I wasn't waiting for the Carter family to fix what they'd broken. I was moving on. You know what no one tells you? When you stop chasing the people who never clapped for you, the silence isn't scary. It's peaceful. I expected grief, anger, some mix of heartbreak and liberation. But mostly, what I felt was stillness. I went back to work with a new kind of fire. Access Path wasn't just surviving anymore. It was growing. Sarah's father made good on his promise. We secured a donor partnership within the month. 3 hospital systems reached out within a week. But the biggest shift wasn't in the platform. It was in me. For the first time, I stopped questioning whether I was enough, whether walking away from med school had been a mistake, whether I deserved the pride I tried to hide under self-deprecating jokes. And then something happened I didn't see coming. An email from a law office I didn't recognize. To Michael Carter, regarding the estate of Henry Carter, my grandfather. I hadn't thought about him in years. He died when I was 19. Jason had always been his favorite, another family pattern, but I remembered the way Grandpa Henry used to sneak me books about systems design and philosophy. Said my brain worked in maps, not ladders. The letter explained there was a small, previously unclaimed trust. Not large, not flashy, but specific. It could only be released once all grandchildren turned 30. Jason had received his portion 5 years ago. Sarah, my cousin, had taken hers and vanished into a yoga retreat in Thailand. Mine? Mine came with a letter. Typed. Signed. Michael. You were always the quiet one. The one who saw the cracks and tried to fix them without anyone noticing. I saw it too. Your father inherited my ambition. But you inherited something far rarer, my conviction. Whatever you do with this money, use it to build. Not just things. Trust. Truth. A better legacy than the one we left you. Grandpa Henry. I sat there for a long time. It wasn't about the money, though it was enough to give Access Path breathing room for a year. It was about being seen. Even decades later. Even by someone long gone. Inheritance isn't always money. Sometimes, it's the first honest mirror you've ever been handed. There was a time I would have gone back. Would have read my mother's letter a second time, searching for subtext, for some thread of sincerity I could hold onto like a lifeline. Would have convinced myself to forgive too early, to re-enter the orbit of a family that only knew how to orbit Jason. But not anymore. I didn't burn bridges. I just stopped trying to build one from my side. When the holidays rolled around, I got the usual Carter family group text. Jason's fiancée, the new one, not Sarah, posted a smiling photo of them in matching sweaters, holding a pumpkin pie. No one mentioned what happened that night. No one acknowledged the fracture. But silence speaks too. I spent Thanksgiving with David and his partner, in a house filled with laughter, board games, and lasagna instead of turkey. No pageantry. Just people who saw me without conditions. I was happy. Not performative happy. Not look at me on Instagram happy. Real. Quiet. Whole. Access Path launched its telehealth expansion in January. We broke 100,000 users. Our story was picked up in a national health policy journal. I didn't send the article to my parents. Didn't need to. One afternoon, I got a call from a number I recognized but hadn't seen in a while. Sarah. Just wanted to say congrats, she said. I saw the piece. You're building something incredible, Michael. Thanks, I said. You were part of the turning point. That dinner, that night. I'll never forget what you said. She laughed. Neither will I. There was a pause. Then, he still doesn't get it, by the way. Jason. Figured. But I'm glad you do, she said. Finally. I hung up smiling. Not because of what she said, but because, this time, I believed it. They called me a failure. A detour. A burden. But I became a builder. A listener. A lighthouse for people lost in systems no one else would navigate. I don't need their pride. I have my own. And I earned it, in silence, in shadows, in the long nights no one else saw. This is not revenge. It's reclamation. Of my name. Of my worth. Of the truth they tried to bury. And if anyone ever asks who I am, I'll answer the way I should have, years ago, with no apology, no hesitation. I'm Michael Carter. And I was never the problem.